Okay, so let's talk about best value. The first thing I'd like to say is that it's a paradigm shift and not a legal change. And the shift happens in our heads. It's where a vendor actually knows what he's going to do before he does it. And it's where we try to minimize all thinking and decision-making by the client. You know, we came across this idea in the last year or so. If a vendor makes a client think, it's the same as if a worker makes their boss think. It's not a good thing. So I'm trying to convince expert vendors or workers who work for a boss, never make your boss or never make the client think. Because after they have to think, they're going to make a decision and we're not going to like what they decide. So thinking goes along with decision making. They're both not optimal things. And this is a change in paradigm because people love to what? It's like it's in our nature, right? There's some people in this world who think they should get paid by how much of this they do. And so they're doing it all the time, right? We also believe that all conditions, wherever anyone is running a project, is unique. There's no two conditions that are ever the same. And we begin to realize that there is a connection between the past unique conditions of a person, the present unique conditions of that same person or organization, and their future conditions. They're all related. So what comes to our mind is all we're watching, wherever we are, is when one set of unique conditions changes to another set of unique conditions. And it's regulated by natural law, which makes it predictable. I guess the only real challenge here is that in all of the academic environment, nobody ever thought that the final conditions were actually set when the initial conditions are set. See, that is the breakthrough. Because when you think about this, if something happens, you end up with a unique final condition. When you look backwards, you begin to understand that the final conditions are merely changing of conditions that came from the initial conditions. That the final conditions always have to be related to the initial conditions. Everyone in the history of mankind has proven this to be true. Which tells us that the final conditions are actually set when the initial conditions are set. And if somebody actually understood what the initial conditions were, they could predict the final conditions. But because we never fully understand the initial conditions, our predictions sometimes are in error. But if we don't understand something, the final conditions are still going to happen. So the final conditions are actually set when the initial conditions are set, which means any attempt after the initial conditions are set for someone to come in during the event and say, I don't like these conditions, I'm going to manage, change, control, influence, and do anything so that the final conditions are not what's related to the initial conditions, that is an inaccurate idea. That is the foundation of best value. What we're saying is what you start off with, it's going to end up one way. You start off with a bad contractor, you're going to end up with a bad product. You start off with an expert vendor, you're going to end up with a good product. We do not believe that anyone can manage, direct, control, or influence a vendor to see more, hear more, do more than what they're capable of doing when we hired them in the initial conditions. This is the whole key behind this. It's very simplistic. Because the initial conditions cannot be altered to end up with final conditions that are not related to the initial conditions, there is no such thing as control, influence, that can help the initial conditions change to something that's not related. It's impossible.